Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Happy Purim. Good morning to our welcome to our Thursday morning class where we generally we teach and study the Tanya, and that's where we're up to chapter 44, I believe. But today, being that it is Erev Purim, tonight we celebrate Purim. Today is the fast of Esther to remember the story of Esther. So we'll take a few minutes to discuss a little bit more another element of the story of Purim. The story of Purim is one of those amazing stories that we tell our children from a young age. The amazing, what we call the hashkacha pratit, right? The divine providence, how everything just worked out. Where the solution to the problem predates the problem, right? Esther becomes queen, which is a crazy idea, right? That a young Jewish girl should become the queen of the most powerful empire of the world. Ahasuerus, we know, was a ruler over basically the entire civilized world, 127 provinces. And Esther, a young Jewish girl, she should become the queen? I mean, it's amazing. Like, who would ever thought of that? And that was all to preempt the issue that we had later with Haman and his terrible decree, where, as we know, because of Esther's position, she was able to speak to the queen and get the whole thing aborted and flipped on its head, as we know the story of Purim. So, who is Esther? And what lesson do we take from Esther? Esther grew up, she had a difficult life. We know that she was an orphan.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know exactly how she became an orphan, but she was an orphan. And she was being raised by her uncle, Mordechai. And when as we know the story that Ahasuerus killed his wife Vashti, he was looking for a new queen. And when the order went out that all girls should come and gather at the king's palace, she was like, "Not me. This is not for me." She has no interest in this type of position. Of course, as a good Jewish girl, it wasn't her place for this. She actually was hiding. She hid. But they found her. They found her. They brought her to the palace. She marries Achashverosh. As we know, she found favor in his eyes. And now we have this terrible decree. We have this terrible decree. Now, Mordechai told Esther to be sure not to tell Achashverosh her lineage, not to reveal that she's Jewish. So Achashverosh doesn't know that. Not only that she's Jewish, Esther came from a family of royalty. She was a granddaughter of King Saul, the first king. Ahasuerus doesn't know this. The decree goes out. Mordechai hears about the decree. Mordechai, who also had a position as an officer, who was always by the gates of the king, he starts crying. He puts on sackcloth and ashes, and he starts weeping. And Esther hears about this. And Esther, being in the palace, doesn't know what's going on. She hasn't heard about this terrible decree. And now she hears this through a messenger from Mordechai. Mordechai sending her messages. You didn't hear? You didn't hear what's going on? Yes, this is terrible for all the Jewish people. You may be saved because you're the queen in the palace, but we're all going to be killed. This is terrible. We got to do something. Esther says, "Well, what should we do?" Mordechai says, "Very simple. Go speak to the king. Speak to your husband. Obviously, right? Speak to your husband." What does Esther say? Not so fast. It ain't that simple. We're not a regular couple that we just chat and we talk every evening. We sit down for a tea. How was your day? How was your day? What's going on? How could I help? We don't take walks together. We don't go on trips together. We barely speak to each other. We barely see each other. Achashverosh, he has to be the one to initiate the meeting. If I want to speak to him, I need permission. I can't just walk into his chamber. In fact, my life is on the line. If I walk into his chamber without being called, he may kill me. And we know that Achashverosh did these crazy things. He killed his wife Vashti. He may not, be in the greatest mood, and I walk in without permission, breaking the protocol. Who knows what's going to happen? I can't just walk into Achashverosh. And what does Mordechai answer? Mordechai knows this. Mordechai knows the danger that Esther is putting herself in if she would speak to Achashverosh without being called. Mordechai says something very fascinating. And I'm going to read this from the Hebrew over here. Mordechai said, Al tedami v'nafshech. Don't think that you are thinking about yourself, by your own soul. Lihimolet beis hamelech mikol hayudim. To basically save yourself by being in the palace, and the rest of the Jewish people may perish, but I'm going to be saved. Ki im hacharish tacharishi ba'is. Because if you are quiet at this moment, if you don't speak up, revach v'hatzala yamid laYehudim, there is going to be a salvation for the Jewish people. Mordechai is like, I know this. I know the end of the story. I know the last chapter. I know how this is going to end. There is going to be a salvation for the Jewish people. There is not going to be an annihilation. God is not going to allow all the Jewish people to perish in one day on the 13th of Adar. That's not going to happen. I know the answer. I know the end. However, if you're going to be quiet, the salvation will come from somewhere else. It's going to happen. If it's not you, it's someone else. But what's going to be with you and your family? Who knows what's going to happen with you? Who knows? The king may kill you for a different reason. What's going to happen on the day of annihilation when somehow we are saved? Are you also going to be saved? Not necessarily. In other words, God is going to save us, but are you going to be part of it? Are you going to be part of this? It's almost like the miracle of Jewish survival. It's a miracle. Jewish people are always going to be around, but are you going to be part of the Jewish people? Are your children, are your grandchildren going to be part of the Jewish people? Yes, as a nation, as a people, we will always be here. Not the Romans and not the Persians and not the Germans and not the Spanish. No one is able to fully destroy the Jewish people. But are we going to be there? Are we going to allow are we doing what we have to do? Educating our children on the Jewish path, etc., that our descendants are going to be a part of this miracle? That's the question. So Mordechai is saying to Esther, Revach v'hatzala yamed laYehudim. There's going to be a salvation for the Jewish people. But v'at, are you going to be part of it? That's the question. Are you going to be part of it? And here he says something interesting. Umi yoidea. And who knows? Im le'es kazois. If it was just for this moment, higat lamalchus, that you have reached, that you have been put in this position of royalty, to be the queen and Achashverosh's wife, perhaps it was all for this critical moment. He doesn't say it was for this moment. He says perhaps, maybe it was for this moment. Maybe it was just for this moment, which is a fascinating idea to think about, where in our lives, we are put in various positions. We are placed in various places. We find ourselves in various circumstances that seems to us It's by chance. I just happened to be there. But Mordechai tells us, Umi yodea, who knows? Perhaps there's a reason why you were there. Like we said, divine providence. There's a reason. A soul descends from heaven and has a mission. And the mission, as Jewish people, our mission is to follow the Torah and live a meaningful life and make the world a better place. Be a light unto the nation, to elevate the world, to bring godliness and goodness into the world. That's a very broad and general mission statement. But each individual has their specific mission. The Talmud says, "B'mai have zohir tfei," that from all the mitzvot, which mitzvah do you have that specialty, that extra focus and passion to this specific mitzvah? In other words, this mitzvah, I could say, even though I fulfill all the mitzvot, but this one is special for me. I have a brother, for example. I'll give you an example. I have a brother who has a very strong, passion for the mitzvah of mezuzah. Mezuzah. Not only in his own home does he have beautiful mezuzahs, and he makes sure they're all placed properly and always being checked, twice every 7 years, making sure he checks them, but also with others. He goes around the neighborhood. He offers people, do you need a mezuzah? Do you need your mezuzah checked? There's a common myth that the mezuzah only belongs on the front door, but people don't realize that every doorway of the house needs a mezuzah. Sometimes the mezuzahs are not placed properly. Maybe they're placed upside down, which happens. Sometimes people take out the instructions and just leave the case, right? They take out the actual scroll. Sometimes it's not placed on the right side of the door, right? It's supposed to be on the right side of the doorway, but if I'm walking in one direction or walking in the other direction, so you have to know how to place it. And till to this day, he probably put up over 2,000 mezuzahs. I mean, there are 2,000 mezuzahs in his neighborhood that are up thanks to him. I mean, that's a certain passion. You have a passion for a certain mitzvah, and you do it to the fullest. And each and every one of us, we also have that passion in that specific mitzvah. And the reason why we have that passion is because this is connected to our soul. That our soul needs certain mitzvah, really much, very, very much connected to it. We may have a passion for it. Sometimes it's actually the opposite. It's the mitzvah that comes most difficult to us. The mitzvah that for some reason it's just such a challenge. For the other person, it comes so simple. I mean, just take mezuzah as an example. Some people come to a new home. The first thing they do, they're calling me. I need 17 mezuzahs. We have 17 doorways in our house. How much is it going to cost? It's worth it. It's worth the cost. The same way I'm spending all that money on my security and my alarm system, and I'm painting the house, and I'm putting in a new roof, and that. Okay, so a couple $100, I buy mezuzahs, right? It's worth it. No problem. Certain people, a mezuzah, I don't know. I need to think about it. How people, my neighbors, such a big deal, right? Just the other day, I went to visit someone here in the city, and I noticed that they didn't have a mezuzah on the door. So they said, yeah, we had a mezuzah, but then after October 7th, we didn't feel so comfortable with it. We took it down. Maybe we could put it back up on the inside. Very uncomfortable, right? The point is, certain people, a certain mitzvah comes easy, no problem. And the same exact mitzvah for another person may come difficult. And the reason why it's difficult, maybe, is because it's that much more important to my soul. So my negative side, my evil inclination knows that let me put up a challenge in the mitzvah that is the most important to me. But the point is that we have that special mitzvah connected to us. And Mordechai was telling Esther, it's so unprecedented that a Jewish girl should become queen. Miyadea, who knows why? We don't know why. Maybe it's for this exact critical moment. You're saying it's a difficulty. You're saying there's a danger involved. I'm not downplaying that. I'm not just ignoring it. What I'm saying is maybe you're there for this reason. And if you don't do it, then the whole point of you being in the palace is pointless. This is the reason why you're there. This is your mission in life. And of course, Esther took it and ran with it. She says, okay, accepted, challenge accepted. And what does she do now? Now she says, okay, I'm willing to go in. Now, if we have to put ourselves in Esther's mind at this moment, put ourselves in her position. She's a Jewish woman. She was chosen as queen. Why was she chosen to be queen? And why did Achashverosh choose her to be queen? Because, as we know, she was a beautiful woman. And Achashverosh was a very superficial person. All he cared about was beauty himself, what feels good for him. And the reason why he chose her, because she was the most beautiful woman. Now she's put up to a challenge that she should enter Achashverosh's chamber without being summoned, putting her life at risk. So she has to prepare for this. What would be the best way to prepare for this challenge in a way that we have the greatest chance that Achashverosh will not kill her, but she will find favor in his eyes, as the Megillah says, and he will be willing to have a dialogue with her and talk to her, listen to her. What should she do? Like Dina is saying, she should make sure she looks beautiful. She should spend the time in beautifying herself, physically, her appearance, so Achashverosh should enjoy seeing her. That would be the natural reaction or preparation for this endeavor. What does Esther do? Esther tells Mordechai, okay, you got it. I'm going. And she says, Leich knoises kol haYehudim hanimtsoim b'Shushan. Gather all the Jewish people who are found in the city of Shushan. V'tzumu alai. I want you all to fast. Don't drink. Don't eat and don't drink for 3 days. 3 days, night and day. 3 consecutive days of not eating. Which is the fast of Esther, some say is to remember this fast. It didn't happen on this same day, but there are various reasons for today's fast and why it's called the fast of Esther. So please tell the Jewish people fast for 3 days. And we know what that means, because fasting is not just the lack of consuming food, but it's really the lack of focus on material things, so we could focus on spiritual. We could focus on God. We repent. We could pray. And that's really what she wanted. She said, listen, I need God's help over here. Everyone should fast for 3 days. But then she adds something. Gam ani v'na'arisai otzum kain. That I and my maidens are also going to fast. And then after that, then like this, I will go into the king, even if it's against the rule, against the law. And if I'm lost, I'm lost. Okay. What does she say? She doesn't say just let others pray for me. She's going to pray. But not only is she going to pray, but she's going to fast. And not only is she going to fast for a half a day, for 1 day, for 2 days, she's fasting for 3 consecutive days. Have you ever looked in the mirror after you fasted for 1 day? How do you look after 2 days? How will she look after 3 days? What would her appearance be? 3 days of fasting, night and day. And now she's going into the king. How presentable is she going to be? What are the chances that Achashverosh will say, oh, Esther, my beautiful queen, I'm so happy to see you? It's seemingly the exact opposite. She just told Mordechai, I'm hesitant of speaking to the king, to going in, because it's against the rules and he may kill me. And now she says, okay, I'm willing to do it. And not only that, I'm going to fast for 3 days and 3 nights. Esther knew something that maybe we don't know. Esther knew that ultimately, for this plan to succeed, it has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with Mordechai. It has all to do with God. That's all that counts. God has to allow Achashverosh to have Esther find favor in his eyes. That's all it's about. Esther has to speak to Achashverosh because ultimately God wants us to do our part. We do our part. But ultimately, it's not our doings that have this, that cause the effect that brings out the reaction. Ultimately, it's really God orchestrating everything. We do our part. God does not want us to sit around do nothing. God wants us to do our part. But ultimately, He's orchestrating everything. Esther knows we have to do our part. I was put in this position. I need to speak to Achashverosh. But it's not about me speaking to Achashverosh. It's about God. So I need to reach out to God and connect with God in a much deeper way and ask Him for His help. And once I have that, the rest is already secondary. I just got to go through the motions of speaking to Achashverosh because that's what I have to do. But that is not where the salvation is really dependent on. It's really dependent on our relationship with God. They recognize that this decree of annihilation came through Achashverosh and Haman, but it wasn't them, it was God. In fact, the Talmud discusses what was the reason for this. Was it because they bowed to the idol? Was it because they ate at non-kosher? Was it because they had pleasure from the meal? I mean, there's like spiritual issues over here that therefore the Jewish people are worthy of annihilation. So if you want to change that, if you want to, you know, change that decree, you got to go to the source. You got to go to the source of the decree, which is up in heaven. Now, that's most important. Now, secondary is we also have to go to, Achashverosh, because that's how this decree came about. There was like the conduit of this decree was through Shushan, through the palace, through Achashverosh, through Haman. But they don't have that autonomy over us. Everything's from God. So this is what Esther recognized. Esther recognizes, yeah, I got to go speak to Achashverosh, but I would rather strengthen my relationship with God, even if it weakens my chances with Achashverosh. I would rather do that than leave that behind and just work on my connection with Achashverosh. It's like if I want money, so I go to the bank. So I know how to go to the bank. I find out where the bank is. I find out how to use a bank card, how to use an ATM machine, or speak to the teller. I figure all that stuff out, and then I go to the bank and I say, okay, I want to withdraw $5,000, and they say, I'm sorry, Mister, you don't got that money in the bank. It's not there. What do you mean? I have a bank card. I have the account. I came all the way here. I know exactly how to use this machine. I know exactly how to do everything I need to do to take this money out of the machine. Why is it not coming out? Well, the answer is, yeah, you're doing everything you need to do, but the provider of the money, or was it you, or was it your father, or whoever was supposed to put the money in the account, it's not there. You don't have money. So if you really want money, you got to get money. And then you could put the money in the account, and then you could withdraw the money from the account, right? So if it was your employer, well, get a job. The employer is going to deposit the money into your account. Now you take out the money. Now, if I have the money in my account and I say, okay, I need money for I need to go buy breakfast. I need the money. So what do you got to do? I can't just sit on the couch and say, "Well, I need my money. I have to go out. I have to learn how to go to the bank or how to use my credit card, how to use my bank account, how to use a check, how to extract that money from the account." Okay, I got to do that. But what is primary? What's secondary? What's most important? Is it most important to figure out how to get the money from the account? Is it more important to figure out how to get the money into the account? Right? So primary is figure out how to get the money into the account. Now that you got the money, okay, you also have to figure out how to withdraw money from an account. Okay, but that's already a technicality, right? I got to get the money, so I have to know how to do it. But the primary issue is, do I have the money? Esther says, okay, and you got to get the money out of the account. I got to speak to Achashverosh. So I got to do it. And there's some challenges involved. I got to learn how to do it. I got to do it the best way. Okay, got that. But the primary issue is, where's the money from? From God. God ultimately is providing. God ultimately is behind this decree. Something was wrong, right? The Jewish people have sinned. Something was wrong with our relationship with God. So the primary issue is let's relate to God. Let's deepen our relationship with God. Let's repent. Let's turn to God in prayer and fasting. And then once we have that in place, now we'll deal with the technicalities of speaking to Achashverosh. And of course, this is obviously very relevant in our lives as well, whether it is business, whether it is everything, health, all that it is, you got to go to the doctor. Of course, you got to go to the doctor. And the doctors are ultimately, as we say in the Torah, they're God's agents. They're angels, and they have saved lives. But to give the full credit only to the doctor and say, well, it's all that counts. No, no, no. There's a God behind it. Unfortunately, we know stories of people who didn't make it through various procedures that have a very, very high success rate. Oh, this is the top doctor, the top surgeon, right? But if we put all our trust in the human, even though they're multi-talented and they're great at what they do, and they get a lot of credit, as they say, when you go to the restaurant, you don't credit the chef, you credit the waiter. The waiter who all they did is just brought you the food from the chef. But I know the waiter. I give credit to I tip the waiter. So the doctors get great credit. But to have only trust in the doctor and not relate, connecting with God, asking God to provide health is a big mistake. And the same is true on more, I would say, on a more macro level, with like the survival of the Jewish people. The survival of the Jewish people. Think about the story of Purim. The Jewish people, up until this decree, you could say were in a very, very good position. They positioned themselves very right politically. Mordechai was in the palace. Esther, the queen herself is a Jewish woman. I mean, you couldn't get better than that. The Jews of Shushan are invited to the party. We're, you know, but shoulders to shoulder with the greatest, top echelon, the top, officers and political parties of Shushan, of Persian Empire. We've made it. We're very well connected. We're very well assimilated. We are in the best kind of secure position. Think about Jews in Germany before, in the 1930s, where there was great assimilation. They were the greatest doctors and professors, and they were very much involved in the culture and the society of the time. And they're kind of left. They left a little bit of their Judaism and their connection with God. They felt this is it. This is it. We've made it. We've made it as a people. We're not different than everyone else. We're like everyone else. And what happens then? The greatest decrees against the Jewish people, the darkest days of the Jewish people comes when we lose that connection with God, when we focus too much on other human beings, even if they're great people. Rely on God. The Jewish people that were invited to the party, they were jumping from joy. They're so excited. Look, we're going to Achashverosh's party. Maybe it was okay to go, maybe it wasn't, but that excitement. Oh, now we made it. Now we're secure. That was the problem. Esther recognized that. He says, we're going to Achashverosh, but that's not really where it's at. That's just something, a technicality that has to be done. Ultimately, it's our relationship with God. It's like the sheep surrounded with the 70 wolves. And there's a good shepherd standing behind the sheep. And the sheep is convinced that if I make a good relationship with the wolves, we'll be able to live in peace. And that's what it does. And guess what? They're living in peace. But the sheep fails to recognize that there's a mighty shepherd standing behind it. So the wolves are afraid. But the moment the sheep says to the shepherd, hey, go home, we don't need you anymore. I got this. Me and the wolves are buddies, right? What happens at that moment? They all come and they jump on it. So the Jewish people, we have a mighty shepherd behind us. And therefore we're able to be so successful in the world. We're able to be involved in the societies and the cultures and be involved and do great things, which is great. But the moment we tell our great shepherd behind us, God, good to see you, but we don't need you anymore. We're very well connected. We're very well established. We're very much, anchored and on good grounds over here. Then what happens is they all come at us. That's what Esther taught us. Esther taught us, we're here. I'm the queen of, but ultimately it's about our relationship with God. Just thinking about our, connection, currently in with American politics and with Israel, for example, right? We need the president who is the most pro-Israel yes, we need a president who's pro-Israel, but ultimately we can't rely on any human being. We have to rely on God. And ultimately, the salvation comes from God. Yes, we use everyone who we're able to use, whether it's the president, whether this president, that president. And yeah, we do want presidents who are pro, but we can't say this is the solution. We can't say that this is where it's at, because ultimately, we don't know what's going to be. A human being is a human being. Everyone has their own agendas. And if we connect with God and say, this is where it's at, if we have a good relationship with God, God is going to save us. Where's it going to come through? It may come through this president, it may come through that president, it may come through here, and we'll take it all, because anyone was able to help. But let's not put our full reliance on that. We rely on Hashem, just like Esther said. I'm relying on God. I'm fasting for 3 days. That's where it's coming from. Now, it may come through Achashverosh, so I got to speak to Achashverosh because that's where I need to speak to. But that's only because that's where it's going to come through. But I'm not fully relying on it. I'm relying on God. So that is a little thought for the Megillah. Like we said, have a happy Purim, the easy fast. Tonight, we read the Megillah after nightfall, which is a little late, but if you're able to make it out to hear the Megillah tonight, that'd be great. And then tomorrow, and then of course, tomorrow is a big Purim celebration.
Right.
Love to see you.
On
And
Shabbos. Yeah.
have a happy Purim.
Happy Purim, Rabbi.
All the best.
Fuck. Thank you. Hello.